All right, I think we're going to get started here. So first off, thanks for everyone that joined us. This is our second Sophos webinar here in the last 30 days here. So one thing we're trying to do here internally at Pine Cove is have at least one of these demos / webinars a month. And so this is our next topic. We're kind of sticking with the security theme and want to dive into kind of the endpoint piece. So talking about in specifics, Intercept X from Sophos, and how that's really been a game changer for us and our customers when talking ransomware and what we're calling it the ransomware killer. So we're excited, as you've seen kind of the format, if you've been on any of these other ones, is it's great that we can bring this to you locally, but we obviously brought the experts in as well. So we have Sylvester and Paul and Samantha from Sophos with us. They're going to dive in and show off their expertise on their products and go through that. So again, thanks to them for joining us as well. I'll click through my slides real quick, and then I'm just going to kick it right over to Sylvester and let those guys do their thing. Let's see. So basically who we are, for the people that don't know on the call. Pine Cove, we're based in Bozeman, Montana. We service, as you can see from that map, we're kind of all over the Pacific Northwest, do a lot. In Montana, Wyoming, we started the business in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and really trying to service the underserved, people that needed help and guidance for these type of solutions. You know, where do we go from a cybersecurity standpoint or from a wireless standpoint? And that's really what we've tried to answer for our customers. We've been K-12 focused for the past 24 years. We've definitely expanded from there, and I believe we have over 20,000 users that we support on a daily basis. So we've seen a lot, and this is, I guess, why we're here. As far as Pine Cove, Dan serves on some national security councils. I serve on the Meta Network Security Council here in Montana, and so we're just trying to be, help the cause and help try to tackle this cybersecurity monster and stay out in front of it. As far as Pine Cove and Sophos, it's been an awesome partnership, and we'll continue to. In 2016, we actually won the Sophos Partner of the Year in North America, which was an awesome honor for us, being here in Montana, Wyoming area. Huge honor for us. So we're continuing with that. We believe Sophos is the answer for our customers, and has really been a great fit in simplifying this beast of cybersecurity. So yeah, we really enjoyed our partnership so far. And then, I always add this slide. It's almost really become our mission statement with cybersecurity. But basically, we believe your organization has either been attacked, is currently being attacked, or will be attacked by cyber criminals. And so our goal is to help you prevent those things, detect those things, and respond when they happen, and help you secure your assets. And so that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this kind of educational seminars and just trying to raise the awareness of how we tackle this thing. So from there, maybe some housekeeping things, and we can kick it over to Sylvester as I say that, so go ahead. Please make sure you're asking questions. We have a Q&A section in there, so you can feel free to ask questions as we go. We'll make sure we get to those and respond to those either real time as you ask them, or at the end we'll make sure we're answering all those questions. So with that, I will kick it over to the Sophos team.
Okay, hello everybody. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, you're seeing it in the ransomware fight against ransomware mode, correct?
Yep, looks great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your time and attention. Basically, I'm going to talk about ransomware, how to fight against it, with our Intercept X added onto our Endpoint Advanced within Central. I'm going to try and keep this at about 30 minutes or so because we will have a demo following. I want to use this slide really to kind of open things up, because we know ransomware affects pretty much every type of device that's within use today, including the Internet of Things. This one's kind of funny because, even though we're not seeing a tremendous amount of IoT being ransomed, we have seen occasions where they've been able to ransom the Samsung the Samsung TV, the smart screens, right? So today I'm going to kind of focus on the competitive landscape. We'll talk about Intercept X, how ransomware kind of really is proliferating and affecting our security problems today. And then we're going to talk about the delivery methods of ransomware itself, phishing and exploits, and how the Sophos solutions, because we do have more than one of them besides Intercept X, can not only mitigate those but also help prevent those from attacking the environment. One of the things that we are finding is because of the amount of cybercrime that we're facing today, I mean, I think the figures are over 4.2 billion records were exposed, and a little over 4,000 breaches last year. The attacks have evolved from just malware infections to more of a hacking position, and that's really what we're up against now. We realize that the security controls that we've used in the past really to protect the perimeter are no longer effective. We're seeing the attacks come from within the environment, right? What that has done is that's really crowded the endpoint space because now the focus is back on preventing and trying to stop those attacks from entering the network at the endpoint itself. Part of the reason ransomware is so proliferating and so common anymore is because the amount of data available in the dark web through all the years of breaches and the amount of material they put up for sale where it's no longer of tremendous value as it was. So what we're seeing is ransomware has become the attack of choice, and really what we're going to focus on today. So when we look at it from our perspective at Sophos, we think there's really three pillars that you have to make a foundation, a solid foundation against any type of cyber threat. Number one, you've got to have the exposure and execution prevention as well as runtime detection. And that's really where we see kind of a division in the way things are being marketed. Those two pillars are really what we associate with traditional endpoint security vendors. And then we've got our new shiny toys coming out on the market that are really focused a little bit on runtime detection, but more on the EDR space, right? Where they're giving you the data behind an attack and helping you kind of figure out how to, the who, what, when, and where, and giving you the historical data along with the forensic type cleanup. At Sophos, we believe to be a true next security or next gen vendor, you've got to be able to cover and incorporate all of those pillars, those three pillars within a single agent. And that's really what we do with our within Central, with our Endpoint Advanced, along with our Intercept X solution. Basically, what we've been able to do is combine those two agents into a single agent and give you a single pane of glass to manage that from. Now, Intercept X as itself it is also a standalone product. I just want to mention that, and it can be added to any other traditional AV vendor. What we're really facing, though, is an increasing attack and increasing sophistication. Not so much sophistication of the user itself, but the type of attacks that we're seeing because of the crimeware as a service model that's being utilized more and more out in the wild. The attacks, like I said, are from within the perimeter, focused on software exploits, primarily in phishing attacks as the number one method of getting that ransomware into the environment. Ransomware is expected to be over $1 billion in profit this year alone. And the other thing we're facing is the lack of threat intelligence, the visibility after the breach. How do we go ahead and then put countermeasures into place, remediate that threat, find out who, when, where, and how it got into the environment, things of that nature. So really what we're facing is an increasing attack surface, really with a diminished edge, right? Because employees are no longer restricted just to the office. We've got laptops, mobile phones, tablets, virtual servers, things of that nature that are really stretching that edge out. And then we're facing, like I said, the organized, more of an organized type of attacker, where they're using crimeware as a service and they're standing up actual traditional business models to commit crime. As we look at it, what we've determined over the last 12 to 18 months is that over 25% really of all the malware created has been created in that period of time. So what we're facing is really that sheer onslaught of new malware that we see coming and attacking us. So we can no longer rely on those traditional methods alone of signature and behavior type analytics to really protect us at the endpoint. The other thing that we're seeing is malware is really disposable or personalized. What they're doing is they're taking those known variants that work and they are adapting those to a particular organization, right? Where it only works on that particular organization. That's kind of why we're seeing some of these next-gen players make claims that they can really stop zero-day attacks, because they're looking at known malware and then trying to do a DNA matching or behavioral type matching of that malware based on the variations that are attacking those specific organizations. That's not really, when you look at it, a true zero-day attack. A true zero-day attack, and we'll talk about this in a minute, is really where there is no patch or it's never been seen before out in the wild. And like I say, 75% of those malicious files are detected at single organizations. So when we look at it from our point at Sophos, we wanted to understand the different models that are being used to protect the endpoint, understanding that the traditional AV was no longer adequate. So when we look at traditional malware and antivirus solutions, we see that they're going to stop about 95% of the known attacks. Right, we're going to get 80% of those. Really, we're going to keep from even hitting the endpoint. Because they're malicious URLs. You got to figure with over 30 years of experience in this space, we've been able to get a lot of knowledge behind that, right? And we've been able to study all these attacks and get our scientific data behind this to understand the objectives and the way these files act. And we've been able to stop those really before they are hit the endpoint through download reputation, URL blocking, things of that nature. That's also where you're going to get in application control and device controls to keep those threats from coming in through, say, a USB stick. Which, by the way, these traditional or these new next-gen guys don't really address the exposure prevention. They're really looking at what's going to happen in the runtime behavior. More or less of what's happening in these advanced threats. Signatures, full signatures, are about 1% or less of what we're really utilizing today to mitigate these threats. And then we've got runtime behavior, where you really need to allow a payload to run either in a sandbox or an emulated environment to see how it's going to act. You need some sort of file that you can do matching on and heuristics on. You need to reach out to command and control, things of that nature to come to a verdict. So really what we're left with finding is that 2% of what we call exploit detection. And that's where Intercept X comes in. And that's really why it was developed. So we could see how we could fill that gap within this pyramid of what we were missing and go after those types of things. So Intercept X is really, like I say, into the anti-exploit. We acquired a company called Surfright, which we feel was the leader in this type of technology. And the idea behind Intercept X was to build a model that doesn't require any prior knowledge of malware itself. So the first thing we looked at was ransomware, because it was a known significant problem in the market, and a solution that was truly signatureless would be of great value. So what we've got to do is we kind of broken Intercept X down into its four major components. CryptoGuard, which really is where we go out and we stop the ransomware and we roll the files back to their original state. The anti-exploit, which really addresses how these malicious files, including ransomware, because it's just another type of malware, are getting delivered. And then we've got the incident response piece, where we automatically go out and give you a root cause analysis. We'll give you visualization of the attack itself within a tree, who, what, when, where, and how that attack spread. And then we've got a secondary cleanup tool, Sophos Clean, which is similar to like Malwarebytes, where we're running a forensics clean after the event to make sure that that full system is restored back to a safe state. So one of the things to understand about ransomware itself is its prevalence. It's not restricted really just to the United States, even though we are a main target. If we look at it, it is a worldwide problem. And really what we have identified is about half a dozen different families of ransomware that really are the most prevalent and the most used. Experts predict that global cost of crimeware itself is going to hit about $6 trillion by 2021. That's 4 years from now. So it's running at a pretty rapid pace, and that takes into account not only the ransoms being paid, but the amount of money that's being spent on tools to try and mitigate these attacks, the time to clean up those attacks, time to investigate attacks and taking those all into consideration is total damage. Ransomware continues to take up an increasing share of that dollar figure. And it's primarily because would-be attackers frequently are accessing exploit kits and other as-service kits available on the dark web with an elaborate ecosystem behind the crimeware. They're providing excellent customer service, technical support, not only to the attacker but also to the end user, teaching them how to go out and get bitcoins and talking them through the whole ransom process. And then you add in the anonymity that's provided by using a cryptocurrency, and we can kind of understand why, as a criminal, this would be so attractive to you. The odds of getting caught are very low, and then the rate of return is going to be significant to you. So when we understand ransomware, what we're looking at is, like I said, there's a 600% growth just in the new family since 2015, and that's continuing to grow as they continue to evolve and do their countermeasures against what we're traditionally using to go ahead and try and prevent those attacks. The average ransom demand has gone up from $200 to about almost $700 in the last year and a half. Ransomware is one of the few cybercrime business models where the same attack could harm not only a Fortune 500 company, but your local restaurant down the street and even your grandmother. So a quick story, about a month ago I met with my insurance agent, new guy for some life insurance. And obviously, you know, they always are curious about what you do. So I kind of explained to him, you know, I work for Sophos with Intercept X, and gave him kind of just an overview about ransomware. And I was curious to see if he had ever been attacked with his insurance business, and he hadn't. The interesting thing is, a couple of days later, over the weekend, he was having dinner with his family, and he kind of mentioned, you know, because he thought it was pretty cool and pretty interesting about this whole ransomware scenario. And his 68, 69-year-old grandmother kind of piped up and said, "Oh, that's what they call it. Yeah, I had to pay that 5 times already." And what he told me was his grandma got hit with a ransomware, you know, because she was click happy, went out, clicked on a link, and was told that all of her files and pictures had been encrypted. Fortunately for her, it was a spam attack, right? And the ransom was actually like $20 or $30. She paid it the first time, and inevitably what happened is she got labeled as an individual that was willing to pay. So she got hit 4 more times. And that's kind of the downside behind paying the ransom. You have a choice, right? You do nothing, you pay the ransom, or you try and go back to business and reinstall from backup tapes. The bad part about paying is you get labeled as a payer, but you're also funding the cyber criminals to go out and develop and proliferate their attacks. We know that ransomware has existed in various forms for decades, but in the last 3 years, the cyber criminals have really perfected the key components of the attacks. This is what's led to the explosion in the new malware families that have made the techniques more effective and drawn in the new lower level of malicious actors and launching to these type of schemes. Again, email is the #1 delivery method, either through a link or an attachment, and we're also finding that in combination with an email and standalone, we've got exploits where we're actually either part of an email where you click on the link and you get redirected to a page, or you actually go to a known legitimate website that's been compromised and you get drive-by attack through an exploit. Those are the 2 main methods that we're seeing for the delivery of ransomware, and it's we've got to understand those type of methods. As we talk about the families of ransomware, like I said, it's expected to increase by 25% this year. What we're seeing now is some of the more successful and more utilized families of ransomware. It continues to evolve, and what we're seeing is right now some new ransomware that's come up just here recently is there's one that's attacking a community of online gamers that are Russian-speaking and game enthusiasts, and it's installed posing as an installer, and it's called Rosalocker. That's one thing, and it's interesting because it is targeting the Russian-speaking gaming community. One of the other ones that's been seen recently and identified is an unconventional Star Trek themed ransomware named after, of course, Captain Kirk, and it's just simply called Kirk. It was written in Python, demands payment not in cryptocurrency, but in a new, or not in Bitcoin, but in a new cryptocurrency called Monero. This is kind of a switch that we've seen in the industry as well. Monero has been touted now as a more private cryptocurrency, a little harder to trace, and the underground criminals are already starting to prefer it as a form of payment. And then what we're seeing as well is some of these old traditional types of ransomware attacks are being repackaged. What's old is new again. Recently discovered was, and this was just in the last couple of weeks, is the Cerber ransomware now has a new variant that has been broken into separate harmless-looking components, and it's designed specifically to fool some of your next-gen type of tools that utilize machine learning based detection systems. Because what they're seeing now is by breaking up that ransomware into separate components, the machine learning tools can't make a determination because they don't have the full DNA or the full structure of that file to analyze. So we can see now that they're starting to get a little more sophisticated, and they're starting to counter the new methodologies that we're using. And again, this goes back to the theory that we have at Sophos, or our philosophy is you can't rely on just one type of tool or one type of model to protect you. You've got to use all of those together in a combination defensive depth. The Mamba virus, for example, is just a variant of the HD decryptor. And this one, interesting enough, is what caught the San Francisco municipal transportation, or for those of us who have lived in that area, the Muni, which is public transportation, last year around Christmas time. It was just basically a spam attack, really, where they were out there infecting anybody who was trying to download a torrent type file. And what happened is one of the admins at the Muni actually accessed and downloaded this torrent file and infected the network. Now, the Muni itself decided not to pay the $73,000 ransom. Instead, they relied on going to backups and trying to restore the system because they didn't want to fund the criminals, even though it would have been cheaper for them. That $73,000 actually, when you look at all the time that they spent with manpower trying to recover from that, in addition to all the free rides they had to give away because their payment systems were locked down, it probably cost them in the neighborhood of $150 to $250 million. But again, that's one of the choices. You don't pay, and you don't get tagged as a target for future attacks, as well as funding the cyber criminals. One other thing that you've got to do in addition to that, once you get attacked, is you've got to take measures to remediate that attack in the future. What we're seeing too often is even if people pay, they pay, and then they don't do anything. People will restore from a backup, and they rely on that backup as a strategy or a full strategy to recover from a ransomware attack, rather than doing the things necessary to try and prevent one in the first place. So when we talk about preventing a ransomware attack, one of the things to understand is phishing and ransomware go hand in hand, right? I think that I read an article that said 90% of all ransomware attacks, or all cybercrime attacks, started with some sort of phishing campaign. That number could be lower, it could be higher, but it's a significant number where it started with a phishing campaign. In Q3 of last year, 97% of all phishing emails contained some sort of ransomware payload. Really, and that's where you're relying on the end user and their curiosity or their fear to click either an attachment or email and open it up and execute the code. It got so bad last year that a series of ransomware attacks on the House of Representatives led Congress to ban members from using their Yahoo mail because of all the phishing scams that were out there. According to Verizon, phishing was the second most common threat vector, and phishing as a service is becoming more and more common, going to increase that as well. The nice thing is, researchers have told us that companies who roll out a training program see improvements of between 26 and 99% reduced clicking rates within those type of emails, just by making their end users aware of these phishing scams. And the average is about a 64% increase. And that's why Sophos, we went out and acquired a company called Fish Threat to address this and utilize this as a prevention type method as well. And I think they did this type of seminar or this type of webinar last week. But real quick, it's very simple. The phishing as a service model is really very inexpensive. They give you great support, and that's what I want to point out in here is as a would-be criminal, this is something that's very enticing to you. You can see they're claiming 61,000 subscribers. But the thing to keep in mind is even with no knowledge or very limited knowledge of technical knowledge, you can go out, and I found this for as low as $65. You can get a phishing as a service campaign or service where they'll actually teach you how to compose the email, give you tricks about who to target, give you technical support, not only for the subscriber or the bad actor, but also give you technical support to the end user who gets attacked and teach them how to buy the Bitcoin and make the payment. And that's what's made this, and I think why we're going to see these phishing attacks kind of get a little more proliferant and a little more common in our day-to-day dealings. Basically what you do is it's industrialized. You go out and pick a campaign. You're going to do bulk phishing, spear phishing, or whaling. Bulk phishing is basically what we consider spam. You know, you'll see a letter like maybe from FedEx because so many people are using Amazon and eBay and expecting deliveries, and we'll give them a notification and say, oh, the status of your delivery is been updated. Please click on this link to see it. Boom, you click on the link, you get redirected to a web page, and you're infected with malware. Boom. The next type of campaign is a spear phishing campaign, which is a little more targeted. The bad guys have actually gone out and done a little reconnaissance either on the industry as a whole or on the company as a whole, and they're going after specific individuals. And it's a little more of a personalized attack. Maybe it's somebody who's going after somebody in shipping and receiving or somebody in finance at a company. Because if you think about it, shipping, receiving, finance, and HR, their job really all day long is to open emails from people that they're really not that familiar from, so they're really prime candidates for this type of attack. And then thirdly, we have the whaling attacks, and this is kind of a term that they took from gambling, I think. If you ever seen some of these gambling programs or watch them, anybody who's a big spender or loses a lot of money is considered a whale. They're really a high-profile type of individual, a CEO, maybe a manager of HR, where they're crafting these very realistic-looking, sophisticated emails to the executive level that compel them to open it. And it's really kind of out of fear and less out of curiosity. It may be disguised as a legal subpoena, as an official-looking FBI subpoena, or something of that nature, maybe something from compliance, and they click on it to open and they get infected. True story, last year in December, January timeframe, my wife's company where she works at was a victim of this type of attack. What they did is they had targeted the manager of her HR department and sent an email that looked like it was coming from the CFO of their headquarters asking for tax information on all the employees, right? Their social security numbers, their names, their addresses, date of birth, blah, 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 saying that they needed those to complete their financial records for tax season. She looked at that and thought, oh man, okay, that's kind of an uncommon request. She went and asked the lady in finance and a couple other people what she should do, and they said, well, you know, if they're asking for it, I guess you should send it to them. So she went ahead and compiled all this information and hit replied and sent it back. About 10 minutes later, she said, oh, snap. And you know, for those of you who are not from Utah, oh, snap is kind of equivalent to a swear word here. So she realized that there were a couple of extra letters in the email address that made her realize that she didn't send it to her CFO. And consequently, what happened was about half of those employees had fraudulent tax returns filed, and the money was distributed to the cyber criminals. My point is, this could have just as easily been a ransomware attack, and then they would have been in even more trouble. So they're getting very sophisticated, and they're very effective at these type of attacks. Again, Scammers have been very successful at targeting like the HR, like we just saw. More than 100 companies last year were actually victims of this. So it's been very effective, and I'm sure soon we'll see the numbers coming out from this year. Last year, a series of ransomware attacks on the House of Representatives, like I said, led to their email members being banned from Yahoo. So what we're looking at is really something that's become very effective, and it's getting utilized more and more. And with Phish Threat, what we're doing is we're trying to educate the individuals on what to look for in an email to prevent them from clicking on those type of links. The number 2 reasons that they click on them is curiosity is number 1, and in the case of the HR lady, fear of not responding quickly enough to a superior. I mean, you got to think about it. Every one of us gets inundated with emails every day, and some of us have a mindset of, man, I got to get through all these emails, and we just start going through them and clicking really without thinking. And what we've got to do is now we've got to take our time, settle down a little bit, and be very diligent about what we're doing when we're responding to these emails. The end user, again, is the weakest link. So when you start looking at a security awareness and testing solution, you've got to be able to measure with real world type of attacks. You've got to provide continuous education to these employees. This has to be something that's ongoing. It just can't be once every 6 months, once every 3 months. It's got to be continuous to keep it at top of mind. And then you've got to be able to have some sort of reporting tool that will measure the success, as well as identify the individuals that are repeat offenders. And that's what our Phish Threat program will do. For those of you who didn't see that earlier in one of the webinars, feel free to reach out to your people here at Pine Cove, and they can get you educated up on that. The secondary piece to the whole threat delivery is the exploit. And that's where we really come into the anti-exploit and the true signatureless type of detection that we're adding in with Intercept X to our endpoint advanced solution. When Windows introduced Windows XP Server Pack 2, excuse me, it did include anti-exploit mitigation. It had buffer overflow protection, and that basically wiped out a whole family or whole class of malware, making it obsolete. But that's where they stopped. And what the security industry didn't do was go out to see what other exploit methods were being used by the adversaries, and is there a way to detect them generically. What we're faced with really is when we look at the vulnerabilities, malware samples are 300,000-400,000 a day, so we're in the millions per year. The actual exploits that we're seeing are from known vulnerabilities within software, right? 90% of those are known vulnerabilities that have been published by the software vendor, and those are in the hundreds of thousands per year. And then we've got the type of exploit techniques that are being used to actually accomplish the delivery of the malware itself. And those are actually in the 10s to 20s. And that's something that's very manageable, and something that Sophos, along with Intercept X, decided to attack. It didn't make much sense really to focus on those millions of pieces of malware and try and keep up with that. But it did make sense to go out and get a solution. We acquired a company called Surfright that actually addressed these 10 to 20 types of techniques that any type of exploit needs in order to be successful in taking control of the system. Again, so if we look at the root of the data breaches, what we're seeing is 300,000 pieces of malware today. 90% of the breaches are exploits. That's really what your traditional type of AV solution is really preventing. And that's where the strength is there. Again, this is why you have to have the multi-layers of defense. We're looking at patch management. We're looking at anywhere from 90 to 120 days on average to apply a patch. 90 days after the vulnerability is announced, before the patch is released. And that's really, truly what a 0 day is. It's a vulnerability that's been identified where no patch yet exists, or no way to stop or block that. And then 90 days is the time frame that it takes the average company to apply that patch. The interesting thing about that is you're still left vulnerable because of shadow IT. We're seeing that 70% of employees confess to using applications that aren't sanctioned by their IT team. And if the IT guys don't know the applications are being used, there's no way for them to go out and apply a patch. So you're still vulnerable to those type of attacks. And then we've got our exploits, or the exploit methods that are being utilized. And that's where Sophos with Intercept X really comes in and adds that next generation type of defense against malware, advanced malware, and in particular ransomware. So when we talk about exploit kits, what we're seeing is that they're traditionally, I mean, if you think about it, it's really using good code to do bad things. This is why it's so hard to detect. You've got memory resident malware, right? It's fileless. There's no payload to block at the network level or detect at the endpoint. It's able to circumvent whitelisted processes. This is what makes it so hard to detect. And again, this is why it can get by just a single point tool, like a next generation type of tool. You got exploit kits available for sale on the internet as a service. Commonly available kits are targeting your most used software: Adobe, Microsoft, Flash, Internet Explorer. Those are the two that are the most attacked. And you've got a range of old as well as new unpatched systems that are being attacked. One of the things that we've also started to see is that we've got private exploit kits being developed by cyber gangs, where they're hiring actually software developers to develop the kit, and instead of renting it out on a wide basis on the internet, they're keeping it and utilizing it as part of their own strategy to go out and commit crimes. Kind of an example of that would be the operators of Lurk or Pawnstorm and espionage campaigns are two examples of those type of threat groups that are used in being targeted. So as we look at it, and we've identified about these 20 different functions within the OS that need to be compromised or need to be hijacked in order to make any successful attack, I've highlighted kind of the most common one used, right? We've got a stack pivot, a heap spray, you've got a ROP attack, you've got process hollowing, things of that nature. The key is that you've got to be able to monitor all 24 of these in order to be really effective. So as we look at the competition, what we're seeing out of these 20 plus type of mitigation techniques, the closest competitive we have is probably in Microsoft EMET. What happened was, even though Microsoft didn't really pursue anything beyond buffer overflow, the universities and the researchers did. And so Microsoft started a program where they would ask the researchers and the universities to submit these exploit detection techniques that they had found. The ones that they found that they could use, they put into EMET. Unfortunately, when they introduced Windows 10, they announced the end of life of EMET. Originally, it was scheduled for January of this year. Because of the complaints from their customer base, they've actually extended that end of life out, and the new date now is July 31st of 2018. The point is, if you're not monitoring every one of these known exploit techniques, you're not going to be as successful at stopping that attack. One thing that we have learned is that the adversaries are not using just one technique. They're using 2, 3, and 4 techniques in conjunction to actually do the attacks. So, for example, they'll start with a ROP attack to point to an address within the stack that then compromises the stack to pivot to a buffer that's controlled on the heap spray by the adversary to go ahead and do the compromise. That's where, if you're not really managing and observing all of those processes, where you're going to get caught. What we're also seeing is that with these ransomware attacks, we used to say they've given up on something that they wanted, which was persistence on the endpoint for the quick ransom attack. Now what we're seeing is they're utilizing that ransomware initial leveraging the machine to put the payload of ransomware, and they're also adding an additional payload of a persistent type of threat, where they're going in and stealing not only the files and the folders that they're encrypting, but they're also stealing those files and selling those on the dark web in the event that you don't pay the ransom. We're seeing techniques where they're actually recruiting individuals where they're saying, hey, you're attacked by ransomware. If you give us the email address of 2 or 3 of your associates or friends or people you know, we'll reduce your ransom for helping us participate in attacking additional people. So they're continually evolving their strategies, and that's something that we've got to continually be mindful of. When you look at the anatomy of a ransomware attack, there's a couple of things that they have to do in order to be successful. They've got to be able to deliver that payload, right? Either through an exploit kit or through a spam or phishing type of attack. They've got to be able to establish command and control generally. We are seeing some variants now that don't reach out to command and control. They actually incorporate that encryption key within the payload itself, where they can encrypt it without notifying command and control. Local files have to be encrypted. This is where Intercept X really is different than anything else on the market today, because we're looking at the behavior now of that system. When we start to see an unnatural encryption of files, that's when we halt that process. As soon as we see that call out for the function of read and write, we'll look for that read file, and if they start to write and decrypt, we capture those files. We make a copy of those on a proprietary cache within the local disk. Once that process is convicted, we'll return those unencrypted files back to their natural state, delete the encrypted files, and then delete that cache that was on disk. The next thing that the ransomware has to do to be effective is, right, it's got to be able to delete itself and then deliver the instructions. Again, we're looking at that unnatural behavior, whether it's rapid file encryption or whether it's some other sort of encryption, because we are monitoring all the processes. We'll look back and see if it was a legitimate application that actually launched that encryption or that read-write process. We'll terminate the attack and we'll restore those files to the known state. Again, that's our CryptoGuard technology. Intercept X is designed to run alongside competitive AV solutions. And how we stop that is we're monitoring the file access. Suspicious file changes are detected. The attack is detected and stopped. We mitigate that. We roll those files back, and then we launch a forensics clean along with our root cause analysis. One of the things that I do want to mention is we are not using the Microsoft Volume Shadow copy to store those unencrypted files. It is a proprietary cache that we're using on that hard drive. Excuse me. The next thing that we always get the question on is, okay, that's great for the endpoint, but what happens to any file shares that I have or any servers? So what we did is we also now have the availability to protect that server with our Central Advanced Server solution with anti-exploit and CryptoGuard for the server. What we're finding is a lot of these new ransomware variants are going out and they're looking first at any backup files that are on the local drive, and they're also looking at any share file folders that they can attack and going for those first, right? Going for the business type of files, a doc file, an exe file, a JPEG, a PDF. Unfortunately, with the endpoint solution, even though we can stop that process when we see it launched, we can't roll back those files on the server. So we have to have that CryptoGuard applied to the server as well, where we can now do the same thing that we do for the endpoint, where we can actually take that those files before they're encrypted, when they're called out for the read and write, cache those, and then restore them back. The nice thing is it also protects you against any endpoints that don't have Intercept X on them that may be attached to a fair share file, or any rogue endpoints that you didn't know about that are in your environment that are connected to these file shares. Additionally, it has other features where you can do a server lockdown, which means it only provides access to any whitelisted applications. You still got the device control and the malicious threat detection. And that's just one extra step that we use really to protect your whole environment against ransomware. Like I said, once we detect that, that malicious activity of ransomware, we immediately launch our root cause analysis or incident response tool. And that gives us the what, when, where, and why, and how that attack occurred. And it's really collecting all of the metadata associated with those processes within the memory, the registry, the network file system, and we're putting those in a file for 90 days for incident response activity. That's on that local disk. The activity is the CPU utilization is really less than 0.5%, but we're capturing that metadata and giving you that historical data so that you can go back to patient 0 or basically really how that initial attack occurred within the endpoint. We're giving you visualization and building out that tree, which typically you'd be looking through log files for and spending hours and hours, if not days, to build out this visualization tree. As you can see, if you can look right here, this little blue dot is where we actually made the conviction of the malicious activity. But we can trace the breadcrumbs back to this red dot, and that gives us the root cause. In the case of, let's say this was a infection that came from a USB stick where they opened up a PDF file. We would know that, and then we would give you the next steps would be for remediation in the future would be, use device control for only authorized USB sticks. If it was an application, we would recommend application control. But we give you an overview of what, when, where, and how. We give you the artifacts or those actual business files that were affected, and you can see here we still have what files were affected, what processes were launched, what registry keys were authorized or accessed, and which internet URLs, if any, were reached out to. And this is all the data that you would actually need to do a full remediation and prevent these types of future attacks. Really, I consider this like a little junior analyst in a box. Because it is automated, you get this in near real time. It's not exactly real time, but it's really giving you actionable intelligence that you can utilize for the future. And then finally, we're going to automatically launch our Sophos Clean, which is a forensics or second level look at that threat and a second level cleanup. So it's kind of like the best explanation I can have if it's malware bites on steroids. For instance, let's say you're in your kitchen and you drop a glass on your ceramic or tile floor and it breaks. You've got big shards and you've got the little tiny shards. If you use a broom, you're going to get up all the big pieces that you can see and that are going to cause immediate harm. But what you're leaving behind are all the remnants or these small shards that can do you damage later on down the road. For example, you're in there barefooted, you stand up next to the sink, it's under the kick plate, you get cut. What this does is this is equivalent to, say, using the vacuum on that floor and sucking up all of those remnants and all of those shards out of the registry, out of the memory, and basically putting this whole system back to a clean state. So as you can see, Sophos Central, Endpoint Advanced, along with our phish threat, our server protection, and Intercept X, really addresses all of those challenges that we're faced with, right? It's truly a next-gen holistic solution from a single vendor in a single agent managed through a single pane of glass. It protects you against the ransomware and the exploits. It's signatureless technology combined with traditional technology. It's giving you the root cause analysis and the visualization of those attacks so that you can get a full understanding of what happened, so that you can have a remediation plan for the future to prevent those, and then you're still getting that advanced cleanup with our Sophos Clean. Some of the things I kind of want to leave you with is, again, prevention is number one. That's really the key. The more you can prevent, the less you actually have to deal with in detecting and remediating in that whole threat life cycle. That phishing campaign that we talked about with phish threat is very valuable because it will reduce anywhere from, like I say, 24 to 99% with an average of 64% of those clicks. It'll provide you meaningful reports and it'll really identify who the major abusers are within the company that are causing you these big headaches. And then we've got when you look at it, we're a complete solution. We've got pre-detection and post-detection and prevention methods that we're utilizing instead of counting just on one particular model. We're utilizing all of these models in conjunction for complete protection. You'll notice we have machine learning in green because it is a very effective model against zero-day threats. We recently went out and we purchased a company called Invincia. They were funded by DARPA for this particular machine deep neural net learning, which is really the most sophisticated or the best type of technology you can utilize in machine learning. Gives you the highest rate of detections with the lowest amount of false positives. And what we'll be doing is within this year, hopefully by the end of the year, maybe by Q3 of this year, we'll have that fully integrated into our Intercept, into our Central and our whole portfolio solution as the finishing touch or the final point for complete endpoint protection. Like I said, it is signatureless pre-execution prevention. Behavioral monitoring is probably still where you're going to catch the most amount of threats, and then we're going to be able to do an isolation of the threats that are killed, log those without exposing any data or allowing the attacker to gain a foothold on that endpoint. This all kind of goes in with our theory, really, of a synchronized security platform. Because Sophos is a Magic Quadrant leader in network as well as endpoint security, we've come up with a platform that we call synchronized security, and we've got a security heartbeat where we're actually allowing the network devices and the endpoint devices to communicate and share that threat intelligence with each other so that you get a full comprehensive protection throughout your environment. For example, if you're using our encryption product and that heartbeat goes to the firewall and we see that there's too many too many attempts to log into that device, the assumption is that device is lost or stolen, and immediately what we will do is we will revoke those encryption keys so that even if they guess the password and break in, it will be ineffective to them. And that's the same thing. If the firewall sees an application that it doesn't understand, it will go ahead and revoke those keys or ask the endpoint what's going on. Again, ransomware strategy backup is just part of the key, but it's not a full strategy. And then here's just some extra steps that you can take to keep yourself secure. At this point, that's all I have. I hope it was informative. If you want to go ahead and take control and give it to who is going to do the demo, that would be great.
Will do. Thanks so much, Sylvester. Now just going to quickly introduce you guys to David Wayne Peckler. He's actually going to be showing you a live ransomware scenario right now to show you what Intercept can actually do. And we can see your screen, David. Thank you. Oh, you're just on mute.
Are we visible?
There we go.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. And I'll go over the ransomware overview and kind of the behavioral piece and how we operate. There were some key pieces here just to kind of reiterate. We are covering the full scope of everything that people worry about today, that signature and signatureless based protection. So Sophos has the full boat with regards to being able to protect against all threats, either old time or current 0 day, even 0 hour. The really great part about the anti-exploit protection is that we cover more of the vulnerabilities and exploits than any other vendor on the market today. And what we'll cover today is basically a lot of what was just mentioned in this quick demo. We'll go through the motions of what a user would experience and kind of create with regards to seeing exploits on their machine executed, and then being able to effectively have those combated with our Intercept X. So here I am as a typical user. I am running on a virtual host, and I am behind our firewall, which is our next generation firewall called XG. And I'm pinging the internet, so we'll kind of get the full scope of the swing of things. Just to kind of add a little color to this whole endpoint protection, I also happen to be running our encryption client, which was just mentioned by Sylvester as well. And so with that client, when you log in and you have the Sophos protection, the full gauntlet. You actually have access to your keys and your encryption keys and your key ring. Plus I'm behind our firewall. And with the heartbeat service that he had mentioned, which is right here, it runs, and if it happens to be in line with the firewall and the navigation of the actual operating system is traversing the firewall, either coming in via VPN or going out to the world or going to another neighboring network, and it interprets the heartbeat has changed and your security status has changed, it'll indeed block you. This information's managed and logged and looked at by the firewall itself, and it has an interpreter that will see all the heartbeats from all the various endpoints that are kind of traversing it, going in or out, depending on firewall rules. So what I'm going to trigger right now is basic, I think it's HydroCrypt. Open up a basic email. It looks like it was custom crafted. It's something that is revolving around something that I'm dealing with today in a personal life, maybe. They say about 90% of all of ransomware or exploits that are targeted for companies are usually specific to a particular targeted company. So that's something to consider. It's not always just random. So here I am, Joe user. I'm opening up an email. I got something that looks interesting to me, like a moth to a flame. I feel compelled to disable or enable the Microsoft security that's built into the actual email. And what will happen is basically it's going to trigger the ransomware to run rampant on my system. It'll effectually look for whatever documents it needs to find. In this case, it'll target this particular area over here. It'll happen instantaneously. It'll be observed behavior. The reason why we call it Intercept, we actually work between the software and the hardware layers of the actual system itself. And as there's an interpreter that's opening and touching files, we'll read that immediately and make a determination whether or not it's bad, malicious, or good, and ignore it. If it's malicious, we'll let it go a couple before we actually make the determination that it looks malicious, and we'll block it and we'll stop it and kill the process. And then in turn, like Sylvester had mentioned, we'll run a scan to clean the entire system and put it back into a working order. At the same time, instantaneously after the actual process is killed, we'll be able to instantaneously recover the files that were affected and changed by whatever the event was. And again, to reiterate what he had said, it isn't a shadow copy whatsoever. It's our own proprietary copy and grab instantaneously read-ahead copies that were made before the execution. So here we go. I'm gonna, if you blink, you'll probably miss it. It's pretty fast, but it'll target these files over here in the right-hand side, and we'll see it encrypt and then roll and then recover. So I'll enable the editing on the actual document, and we let it run. It's detected instantaneously by ransomware. It's blocked, and then you can see over here files have already kind of changed. So we see that there's been some activity over here, and then there's also clean copies of the same files. So what happens right now is that there's actual sweep that's running rampant, and it's kind of going through and making sure that everything is cleaned up. Simultaneously, also, the administrators that are listed in the central account will receive an email instantaneously telling them that there was a particular event on a particular machine, who the user was, and the actual nature of the actual message itself. As you can see, my ping actually stopped to the internet, so if I went and I checked on my firewall, which is part of my world here, I can see there was a security heartbeat changed, one of the endpoints, which is the actual machine I'm on, and it'll list that same information in here. If you have a lot of users that show this type of behavior and detection, there's also reports that can be run specifically that give you specific information about user threat quotient, how many people have continually been infected, maybe raise a flag and go back and kind of determine whether or not that's somebody you need to talk to because they continually are repeat offenders. So this is busy doing its own scan. You can see down here on the encryption portion that I had mentioned, my keys have been revoked and I no longer have access to them. So if any machine was compromised or anything was taken, the files would be unreadable if encrypted with our solution as well. So in the meantime, I go over to my Sophos Central interface, and basically what happens is during the cleanup process, we're going to make sure that everything's free and clear locally and put things back in place. But also, after it's done, there'll be a collective amount of data gathered and uploaded into our central console. Central console will provide the access to be able to see what we call root cause analysis. The incremental dashboard will grow with each event that it's seen. And under endpoint protection, we have the data that's gathered from root cause analysis, giving us the ability to take a little bit, peer a little bit deeper into exactly what's transpired on a particular event. You can drill down into each event. We have the ability to make notes depending on who's taking the actual support case to continue to track the events and maybe to look into some more root cause information. The artifacts that we gather are specific to the actual event themselves. There's a whole list of them, but we also break them down into a kind of a filtered mode. Business files that are associated with the actual detection, which are the file types, how many times they've been touched or abused. Other things, temporary files, components, the normal files from the Office document. The different processes that were involved, depending on what they were, we can see the actual pieces and parts that were involved. The registry keys, also kind of big. There's a lot of changes. We can revert back these as well. They're all tracked. This can also be exported out in the form of a CSV file for further examination. And then a lot of times with the network control, this is the command and control piece where when there's ransomware, there's a key exchange, a public key exchange that takes place. And the client will prevent that. And what happens is the ransomware tries to reach out and communicate, do the key exchange so that they can hold your files ransom, and then either give you the threat that your keys will be deleted if you don't respond within a certain amount of time, or just something that they have. A lot of times when they can't reach out that way, they'll use a default key, which is another kind of scheme piece because they didn't really get to do the key exchange. And then we have what we call our threat chain, which kind of really depicts what's happened with the actual detections themselves. We can see over here at the beacon event, which was mentioned before, and it trails all the way back into the area where we can see it's continued to proliferate itself from the actual root cause itself and the origin of stuff. With the acquisition of Invitia, we'll start to build more information eventually into the root cause analysis or around the origins and other details that go a little bit deeper and elaborate a little bit better, better than what we have today, which is very thorough. Nobody on the market has anything that is actually this efficient and successful at being able to instantly stop and revert back copies and also provide all the root cause analysis information. And just I went back to the affected endpoint. The actual scan is finished, and it's asking me to go log back in to get my encryption keys back. So I'll authenticate. It allows me to get my encryption keys back. Then I can go in. I can take a look if I wanted to on the dashboard, and we can see that everything's been cleaned up and it's all better. You can see my pings resumed, and if we looked at the firewall, we can see that my security heartbeat and status has changed back to green, which basically is indicative of the ping, meaning I'm allowed to go out to the internet still. So that's basically it. That's what I got. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David. That was great, and thank you, Sylvester, and everyone else from Sophos. And I appreciate everyone staying on. That was really good information. We went a little bit over, but thank you everybody for your time. And Brandon, I don't know if you're on, if there's anything you want to add, but we'll continue to try to do these on a weekly basis, or well, either bi-weekly or monthly, but just keep the information coming and stay on top of this security stuff. It's kind of a crazy world out there, but Sophos is doing a good job leading the charge and giving us products to protect us, so we'll try to keep bringing you guys information, and again, I appreciate everybody staying on and watching that. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to email myself or Brandon or anyone else from the Pine Cove team, and we'll try to get those answered for you. But if nothing else, thanks again, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care, guys.